Hello viewers, welcome to this NPTEL course on effective learning for professional development. So, today we will discuss about the first module, that is effective learning. What do we mean by effective learning? So, as you know, learning is a lifelong process, it is a continuous process, and it has been defined in many ways. However, most of the psychologists, they define learning. Learning is a process that brings relatively permanent changes in the behavior as a result of formal learning, experience, etc. So, here we can say that learning brings relatively permanent changes in the behavior, and the changes are very much positive in nature. So, now as we can see, learning is a lifelong process. So, now here we will be discussing on effective learning. How can we say that from learning to effective learning? That means the changes that takes place in the human behavior or organization's behavior, that relatively stays for a longer period of times. So, similarly, learning as a change in behavior versus a determinant of changes in behavior. Learning definitely, when there is it is a relatively it brings relatively permanent change in the behavior. So, it is because of the learning changes in the behavior takes place, whereas other factor is that learning is a determinant of the changes in the body, is a factor of or reason of bringing the changes in the behavior. Therefore, the learning involves some kind of change in the organism, human being, etc., and which is necessary, but not sufficient for observing the changes in the behavior. That is, without learning, changes cannot be ensured. But however, that change is not enough, like observing that changes is not enough or it is not sufficient for the learning to take place. So, that is why learning as an enduring change in the mechanism of behavior. Learning takes place from time to time, from in the informal way, formal way. So, by observing other things, by learning intentionally, or in the social gatherings, everywhere learning takes place. But just observing learning changes by observing the changes in the physical way may not explain all the processes of the learning. So, learning as an enduring change, continuous change in the mechanism of behavior, it is more of how to make the learning more productive, more effective, and more permanent. So, learning similarly, so we are discussing the definitions and the meaning and the nuances of learning. Similarly, learning as a contiguous causal effect of experience on the behavior. Without, in absence of the formal learning also, suppose we are experiencing some new kind of things from, or we are doing we are working in a particular setup with a different skill set for a continuously over a period of time. So, learning also takes place as a result of the experience also, and the causal effect of, because there is a cause and effect relationship is there, and because of our experience in a particular setup, particular workplace, particular work context. So, because of that continuous cause and effect relationship, and because of our experience also, learning takes place. So, learning can be, so thus learning can be defined as a change in the behavior of an organism that are the result of the regularities in the environment of that organism. That means, if regularly we practice something, regularly we do something, perform something, and as a result of that regular practices, experiences, etc., also learning takes place. So, that is why, in order to say that learning has occurred, two conditions must be met, two conditions must happen. Like, first is that observable changes in behavior, like whenever learning takes place, definitely it brings some changes, modifications in our behavior, in thought processes, in our actions, etc. That is observable change in the behavior. And second is that change in the behavior must be due to the regularities in the environment, repeatedly, systematically, in a disciplinary way. When we perform, we execute, we practice, and etc., then that regularity also is another factor of learning to take place. So, one is the observable, if there is an observable changes in the behavior, that causes learning, and another is that there is a certain regularities in the behavior, change in the behavior over a period of time in the particular context. So, then you can say, so that is why learning is seen as an effect. So, learning is seen as an effect, is an impact, is a result which is observable in the changing behavior. So, sometimes also learning happens in a non-association way. For example, non-associative learning takes place refers to decrease in the intensity of the response as a result of repeated presentation of the stimuli. Like, suppose we are being exposed to particular stimulus regularly. For the first time when it happens, it draws our attention, but repeatedly if it happens, then it becomes that means we do not give so much of attention to that, it becomes non-associative, not relevant for us. So, like for example, when we are particular environment, some ringing of the bell may cause some it draws attention, may cause some concern, etc., but repeatedly it happens, then we ignore it. So, that is called the non-associative learning, that we take it as though it happens. So, it decreases slowly and steadily it decreases the intensity of the response. In initial stage, we may first of all it draws our attention, we give attention to that, what it happens, etc., but with the repeated happening, then its intentions, the intensity, its to ignite the response decreases. That is called the non-associative learning. So, learning is the effect, learning is the cause also. We have already discussed learning, because learning causes the changes in behavior, and by observing the effect, its impact on our behavior, we assume that yes, learning has taken place. So, these are some of the definitions. Now, the functional definition of the learning. Functional definitions promote the development of cognitive learning theories. Now, when the researchers, they have started working on the different dimension, components and definitions of the learning, some says that it is cognitive, some says that it is behavioral, some says that it is observable, associative, etc., different with all these kind of various diverse viewpoints, then the learning theories develop. So, these definitions, these functional learning theories definitions are cognitive definition of the learning, like learning as it is being defined as a mental as a cognitive changes, mental changes in the mental structures, mental constructs. So, that is this definition says that it refers to a specific change in the organism, a change in the mental constructs, means mental construct in terms of our ideas, in terms of our knowledge, in terms of our association, in terms of our representation of certain things. So, that can function as a contiguous cause of the changes of the behavior, because these are the factors. So, these are the factors, continuous factors of bringing change in the behavior. So, it is considered as the causal factors, cause of changes in the behavior, primarily in our mental structures, cognitive structure or constructs, like in our thought process. Okay. So, then learning changes the physical structure of the brain. So, when learning takes place, there are also biological, neurologically also there are some changes takes place in our brain through the process of continuous interactions, because when there is a continuous interaction between the input of information and the coding, then input activation of the input, the information that we take, then we further process it. So, some physical changes also in the happens in the structure of the brains. That is because of these continuous interactions. That means our interaction with the stimulus, then we receive it, then we process it, we think it, and continuous interaction between the learning component from the environment and with our perceptions and understanding. So, because of the continuous interactions also, it brings not only the changes in our ideas, in the constructs and etc., but also in the physical structure of the brain. So, the psychology of learning primarily focuses on. So, there are many theories, but the basic philosophy of the psychology of learning, that it focuses on how people learn. Now, here the question is that yes, it is sure that because of learning, changes or modification of behavior, changes of behavior takes place, which is relatively permanent. Okay. But how learning takes place, that is how people learn, how they interact with the environment in which they learn. There are what are the different mechanisms of learning, what are the different process of learning, and how do we learn. It is a long term process, a continuous process. So, the psychology of learning primarily focuses on how people learn, how do they remember, how do they interact with the environments, all these know hows and know whys and know whens, all these kind of processing activities. So, that is very important for learning and understanding the impact of learning and its impact on the brain. Then next comes here that is why to summarize, learning can be described as a process by which an individual, it is a long term process, continuous process, by which we acquire the novel ideas or the experiences from the situation when we are exposed to new experiences, new kind of situation, contextual factors, etc., then we try to understand it, summarize it and extract the meaning out of it. So, we acquire novel ideas, new ideas from our experiences and from our learning interactions. Then we retains and applies the ideas, skills and knowledge in solving the problems. Like for example, whatever suppose we have grasped, we have comprehended, we have understood, we try to apply it in different kind of situation. So, we apply our ideas, we apply our skills and competencies, we apply our knowledge, we apply and try to resolve while apply it in our real life context, in solving the problems, in confronting the problems, in analyzing the problems. So, that is we receive, we understand, we comprehend, then we try to practice it or apply it for solving the day to day problems. So, it also modifies the behavior, it also modifies our behavior. So, by the experience gained in the past and making the changes permanent. So, continuously when we learn, we grasp new things, so we try to adopt it, apply it in our thought process, in our behavioral practices, in our manifestation, etc. So, slowly and steadily in this, that is why it is always called that continuous learning brings the permanent changes in the behavior, because whenever we receive and we grasp, we try to integrate all these essence is the themes, its ideas and thoughts etc. in our practices, in our workplace practices, in our personal experiences, that means personal or day to day life problem solving behavior. So, we practice it. So, it modifies the behavior, not only it gives the ideas, new ideas, but it also gives us the cues and clues to translate it into our practice in solving the day to day life problems. So, as you can see this from this figure, like for example, whatever we learn, definitely we learn certain things, we extract the themes, get the meaning out of it, then comprehend it, then we try to apply it. Whatever you have learned, we will apply it in the particular situation, maybe that in exploring the new environment, new concept, understanding the difficult concept, or maybe in the workplace context or in our day to day life in solving the problems. So, we try in 2-3 ways, we will try it. Okay. So, apply it and then we will do it, then actually out of 3 occasions we practice it, we execute it in 1 occasion, that we do it. So, after doing it, after solving that problem, after practicing all these things, again we review it. That means, we reflect on it, we try to analyze it, and that is called the we review it, whether that was the best way, most effective way, most most cost effective way, as most successful way of doing the things in that way or not. So, like for example, whatever we study before the exam, whatever we study, we learn again. One thing is that before exam we practice it, self practice it, self check it, self testing our own ability. Then suppose, and that after giving the exam also, we again review the question paper, like to what extent we have been successful in answering the questions, what will be approximately our score, etc. So, after doing similarly the problems we solve by adopting one strategy, then we review it. Then we review it. After reviewing, if we find that no, still there are chances that it can be improvised, still there are opportunities, still there are possibilities of changing some positive aspect, then we review it. Then again that review, after review, then again the revised version gets, again we learn it. So, in this process learning, whatever we learn, we apply it, do it, review it, and again after review the revised version, the updated version, again we consolidate in our process, memory processes, learning process. So, similarly, so that is why, so learning is a continuous process. So, ultimately learning is a continuous process having the following characteristics. Now, these are the like the learning, we have just now discussed about how learning takes place, etc., but what are the outcomes of learning? Okay. What are the results, what are the impacts, what are the factors that significant factors of learning? For example, like learning is the modification behavior. Yes, definitely, be it social learning, formal learning, observational learning, in whichever way we learn, it brings modification in our behavior. What is learning is purposive. Always learning, mostly learning is goal directed, purposive. That means, we learn certain things with an intention, with a goal and purpose. So, psychologists like McDonald, he stresses that the purposeful nature of the learning, that is goal, that means he has developed also the theory that goal oriented, goal directed learning. Okay. So, that means learning is goal directed, without goal and focus, that is learning, the learning is meaningless. So, learning always is purposive and is carried forward with a goal. Again, learning is a continuous process. knowingly or unknowingly, whether consciously we are learning it or unconsciously learning it, like observational learning or casual learning, etc. Learning is a continuous process. Sometimes we intentionally learn it because we think that is important for us, but otherwise in other times also, in different occasions also, through observation, etc. also we can also learn it. And yes, learning is a universal phenomenon. Learning is a universal phenomenon. Learning takes place everywhere, across the globe, across the across the living organisms, across the culture, across the environment. Learning takes place. So it's an universal phenomenon. Learning is progressive and development. Learning is always upward, development, progressive. That is moves towards the positive change, bringing the positive changes in the behavior, in thought process, in action. And learning is transferable because it can be transferred from one situation, one context to another context. Like suppose in class 8 whatever we have learned, it will be transferred to class 11 level thing. In the past whatever we have learned in a particular sector, it will be transferred, it may be transferred to the next future learning. So learning is transferable, learning is feasible, possible, and learning is material, learning of the material things, learning of the subject matter, learning of different contextual experiences. All these things it facilitates learning. Sometimes it facilitates if they are aligned or they are similar kind of thing. Sometimes also it inhibits, that means it hinders or it obstructs. Maybe that's like that is a kind of, again, causes of the forgetting also comes in there. Learning is transferable provided we have invested time, we have learned properly, comprehended properly, we have extended it up to its application, and we have analyzed it further, so that it gets consolidated, and that transfer of learning will be way more helpful and positive. But if we learn it in a very very loosely, but then very simple way, a low level, a shallow level, then it may or may not be transferred in that positive way, but it may also interfere also. So learning includes all the three aspects of the human behavior. Learning all the three aspects of human behavior, like learning brings changes in our thought processes, learning brings changes in our attitude, in our emotion, in our behavior, in our motivation, etc. And in performance also in learning can bring changes. So learning affects all our thoughts, cognition, affection, and behavioral aspect. Now then, coming to the learner's characteristics. So learning is a process. Now learner is the major stakeholder, is the key, as the nucleus of the whole learning process and activity. So learner characteristics consist of many aspects, like suppose I am the learner, then the learner, the human being, is a composition of many psychophysical traits. So learner's characteristics is that first consider the personal characteristics, his demographic information, his age, maturation stage, his background, cultural background, all these is personal characteristics. Then academic characteristics comes in, his prior knowledge, what is his current state of knowledge, at what stage, developmental stage he is, what is his previous learning, what are the learning goals that is integrated in these things, what are his prior knowledges, and whether he has what type of educational level he is in, or type of education, whether technical, non-technical, his prior knowledge, previous knowledge, background, what are his learning goals, whether individual goal or group goal, all these are the academic characteristics. Okay. Now thereafter the social and emotional characteristics related to the group or the individual, like social, that is his social characteristics, emotional characteristics, either embedded in the group or the individual has got. For example, the socio-emotional characteristics, like for example in the group, like where the individual within the group is his sociability, his self-image, his self-efficacy, his mood, his preparedness, his willingness to learn, his willingness to collaborate, his self-esteem. All these things are some individual factors and some group factors, and how the person behaves in the group. So these are the socio-emotional factors or the characteristics. Thereafter finally you come to the cognitive characteristics. Cognitive characteristics like his attention span, his memory, his mental procedures, his level of intellectual skills, like understanding, comprehending the thing, memorizing, remembering the things, and know-hows of the how to solve the problem, what with what type of content. So how the learner perceives, remembers, thinks, solves problem, organizes or represents the information in his or way, like all the processing things, then how do we present it. So all these are the cognitive characteristics of the learner. you know, here the learner characteristics have been defined, like you know what type of, what are the varieties, diversities are there. So these are the learning, you know, learning digital learning platform, prior knowledge is there, learner's goal is there, then technological access is there, then learning, you know, context is there, environment is there, all these factors integrate and and be a part of the learner's characteristics, and like how much technological exposure is there, what is the learning context is there, digital whether digitally native digital savviness is there or not, prior knowledge, all these factors, co-factors rather, it determines the cognitive characteristics of the learner. So, so the group, again, individual learning, self learning differs a little bit from the group setup, group learning. So, there are large differences between the characteristics of the different learners in the individual context and the group context. So, depending on their developmental stage. Now, these groups also differs in their motivation, in their prior knowledge, in terms of their expertise level, in terms of their physical abilities, study times, etc. So, learners also differ in terms of their level of motivation, their prior knowledge, their study time, regularity or effort they put, their expertise and their capabilities also. So, the differences within the learner characteristics have an impact on the structure of the instruction, the degree of the support and the guidance of the learning process. So, according to that is why according to the learner characteristics, learner readiness, learner preparedness, learner developmental stage, the instructional processes, curriculum, etc. are being designed. Whether it, that means how to match it with the learner's developmental stage, his mental readiness, his background and his existing knowledge, prior knowledge, etc., etc. So, learning and instruction, the instructional pedagogy curriculum should match with the learner's characteristics. So, that is, learning characteristics are highly individual and vary from every learner. Like in the classroom of 50 students, each and every learner is different. His thinking style, learning style, his memory ability, his application knowledge, everything will be different, because every learner is unique and he is having his unique characteristics. So, and in the classroom of the 50 students, how to deal with these 50 students, learners, catering to their individual characteristics, individual individual needs. Needs means psychosocial needs, educational needs, emotional needs, etc. So, therefore, it is therefore the instructional designers you know, they must constantly deal with these new kind of differences, diversity that exist among the learners, and must take the decisions as to what characteristics of the target group or the audience group are the most important when tailoring or designing the instruction. Okay, so now then thereafter comes the learner's readiness, whether the learner is ready for this lesson or not, ready for the classroom, ready for the for taking up this lesson or the curriculum or lessons of the curriculum, or the for they prepare for the examination in the classroom activity or not. So, how, why and how they should be ready. Now, learner readiness means mental preparedness, willingness and attention, everything, that is learner's readiness. So, learners are able to actively and effectively control and monitor their motivation, cognition and the behaviors, and successfully complete the target academic skills. When the learners are willingly capable of and mentally ready, and they are active and effectively they can monitor, control their cognitive behavior, motivation, and they are primarily focused toward the academic skills and the tasks. So, that is called that is one important part of the learner's readiness. Then often it is also defined as the ability of the learner to acquire the knowledge and initiate the behavior change, which lead to effective successful learning outcome. Like, for the first thing is that to what extent the learner has acquired the knowledge and the ability, has the capacity and ability to grasp it, to understand it, grasp it, and then to practice it, then to translate it into behavioral changes, then to initiate the behavioral changes, that is, the translate it, apply it in the day to day activities or the behavioral changes. That means the learner is able to not only acquire the knowledge, but he has the ability and capacity to translate it or to put it into the practice. That is another thing. Then learners then also determines the learner's autonomy and self-efficacy. How autonomous, that means independent the learner is, he can independently learn, that is learner's autonomy, freedom, autonomy, independence. Self-efficacy, he has the ability, he is capable of doing certain things, that is self efficacy, his individual efficiency. Then self regulation, he can monitor his own learning, he can understand it, he can change it, he can regulate it, he can control his study behavior. So, self regulation or self directed learning. When we talk about some students like higher secondary students or higher education students, they are very much focused on self learner, means they not only understand the content, but they can monitor and regulate their own behavior. So, that is all that they are. So, they decide what to do with the content, when to do, how to prepare for it, how to achieve the success, how to map my progress, all these things like self directed learning, primarily adult learners. So, every moment whatever they are learning, then they are not just receiving it, preparing it, but also reflecting on it. So, self directed learning, learners attitude, some and beliefs towards the expected learning outcome, like they also assume that what would be the ultimate, what would be my result, what would be the learning gain, what would be the learning outcome from this course, particular course that I have taken up. And so, again learner's intellectual character, his capability, his mental ability, capability of understanding a subject, like whether he is very comfortable in technical subject, science subject, mathematical subject, how or he is very very sharp in understanding and remembering the historical events, geographical data, all these things. So, that is the learner's intellectual character and the learning strategies he adopts. So, all these are also again important factor, learner's autonomy, self efficacy, self regulation, whether he is an independent learner to give the direction to his own learning, and he has the learner's attitude and his positive attitude towards learning, even if it does not matter how difficult the subject is, the learner is determined to overcome all these things. He has a very positive attitude, and he puts effort on this. So, this is, and self regulated learning refers to the learning strategies both as action and the processes. So, when the learner reflects on his own learning processes, thought processes, so he analyzes it, reflects it, analyzes it, and also in order to improve it, in order to rectify his strategies, he also takes some actions, that is both in terms of action, that if he feels that now this methodology, this strategy has not helped me a lot, then I have to change the process of understanding. Maybe he has started something different strategy of writing down the notes, taking the notes, or maybe demonstrating it, explaining or applying the the concept mapping method, some other method strategy to retain more information and perform better. So, that also depends on the self regulation of the self regulated ability, self regulation of the learners. That is, self regulated refers to the learning strategies both as an actions and the processes. What action I need to take and how should I do it, how should I change, how should I prepare myself, which are directed towards the acquisition of the target information. My goal is to secure, suppose, as 85%. Then now with present existing practices, I am getting the 60% score. Then what should I do, in whichever way, which strategies, in whichever way I should prepare myself, so that I can get 85%. So, from time to time he is evaluating, reflecting, analyzing his own performances, giving the self feedback, then changing the strategies, so that he or she can get the more marks, secure more marks. So, that is called the self regulated behavior. The learner monitors, analyzes, maps his or her performances, formulate the strategies, apply it, then see the results from time to time. So, that all his learning strategies and performances are being evolved in the process of. So, then comes the learner's motivation. So, motivation is the most important factor. So, sometimes motivation primarily are two types, primarily, that is, one is extrinsic motivation, we learn, study something, prepare for examination itself, because our goal is to get a good mark or good grade, or secure the certificate or credential, etc. Another thing is that we learn because we love to learn it, because we like the subject, because we love to go into the depth of that subject. So, motivation can be intrinsic, that is because I love literature, I love philosophy, all these things, that is why it is more, I am more passionate about learning certain things. that is because of my intrinsic motivation, my liking, special liking for a subject, or I am learning it because I have to gain certain certificate, some credentials, some degrees, etc. That is the external factor. So, learning. So, but both the ways, both the intrinsic and extrinsic motivations are complementary to each other. So, the criteria of learning are like, for example, criteria of learning, like learning involves change, learning endures over time, learning definitely is followed by the changes, learning endures over time, over the time, or the long run, it's a long run, long term, and learning occurs through experiences, through experience also, from experience also we gain more thing. Learning is an activity of construction. Always learning is positive, constructive, progressive, all kind of things. So, and learning is handled with in the context of others, in group context also learning takes place, and it is driven by the learner's agency, that the ownership of the learner himself. So, I think I should conclude here right now. In the next class we will continue with the other slides, other definition and other aspects of the effective learning. Thank you very much.